So my question is, should China abandon the Belt and Road Initiative? Recently in the news, if you've been watching the news, China has become associated with this sort of international boogeyman in international politics. Terms such as the new Cold War, multipolar world order, and spy balloon have become all too familiar to Americans who know anything about China. But why is that? China in the past few years has experienced an exponential rise in its geopolitical power, and much of that can be accredited to one policy, the Belt and Road Initiative. The Council of Foreign Relations reports on February 2nd, 2023, that the Belt and Road Initiative is an initiative by China that it claims to create a new Silk Road, wherein it invests in infrastructure in developing countries in order to aid those countries in engaging in international commerce worldwide. This has, however, come under fire by Western critics of China, who claim that the Belt and Road Initiative is simply an attempt at debt trap diplomacy, in where China attempts to get developing nations indebted to it in order to expand its own influence worldwide and to push its own military and economic agenda. So, with so much controversy being created with the rise of China and this specific policy, we are forced to ask ourselves the question, should China abandon the Belt and Road Initiative? And the answer is absolutely not, for the following three reasons. Firstly, because it allows China to project its soft power. Secondly, because developing nations are reliant on Chinese investment. And lastly, because it encourages Western competition. While soft power sounds kind of funny, if you're being honest, it is no laughing matter when it comes to international politics. DW reports on October 25th, 2022, that China has bought up majority stakes in a variety of European ports, including in Germany, Spain, Greece, and Italy. What this allows China to do is ultimately control the import of Chinese goods into Europe and allow China to have a say in whether or not it can export its products to Europe. And this not only benefits Europe, it benefits China because it allows China to continue using its cheap exports as leverage to Europe. And by owning these ports, gives China a solid base that it can export goods into Europe and continue to influence the economies of Europe through. Additionally, the Observer Research Foundation reports on August 25th, 2022, that China accounts for 13% of bilateral lending to Africa. China lending so much to Africa allows China to essentially dictate the terms that that money is used. China can then influence African politics, it can influence African economics, and it allows China to use Africa as a base for further expansion of its own power, whether that be to negotiate favorable deals for use of natural resources or manpower and so on. It allows China to expand its influence on the global stage, and for that reason, the Belt and Road Initiative is absolutely crucial to China's foreign policy. However, just because China is winning doesn't mean that other countries are losing either, because the second reason why China should not abandon its Belt and Road Initiative is because other developing countries are dependent on Chinese investment. Reuters reports on November 22nd, 2021, that China has invested a total of $1 trillion into Africa alone through the Belt and Road Initiative. And while this is definitely a large sum of money, it fails to capture the true impact of this investment. Africa is a rapidly urbanizing sector of the world, and it is an economy, and it is a continent that has many developing economies that are quickly growing to rival more developed counterparts in Europe and North America. China getting its foot in the door in African development allows these countries a source of credit that will be unparalleled in its importance to aiding these countries in their development, and will affect the lives of hundreds of millions of people for the better. when Chinese development comes through, it often comes through in the form of seaports, airports, and other crucial infrastructure that is necessary for a country's economic development. And this sort of capital is absolutely crucial for Africa to continue on its path towards becoming more developed and to lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Additionally, CNNBC reports on July 7th, 2022, that when developing countries were dealing with outbreaks in COVID-19, it was often reliant on Chinese investment and on Chinese vaccines, such as Chile, the UAE, and Uruguay. China being such an important helper in the combating of COVID-19 proves that China is indispensable on the global stage when helping developing countries deal with their issues, whether that be poverty or COVID-19 or anything else. Developing countries have undeniably sided with China on the global stage, and as a result, China is necessary and Chinese money is necessary for these countries to continue on their path of development. And lastly, China becoming such a crucial player on the global stage has become important to the West as well. Because the final reason why China should not abandon the Belt and Road Initiative is because it encourages competition with the West. The New York Times reports on July 13th, 2022, that Western countries, the G7, has announced a $600 billion plan to increase investment in infrastructure across the world, no doubt to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative. All of the positive things that I just talked about for China apply to the West as well if these investments come through. And investment should be a priority for countries, especially in the developing world. And so, that is an incredibly important development on the global stage. Thus, the following three reasons. Firstly, because it allows China to project soft power. Secondly, because China is important to developing countries. And lastly, because Chinese Belt and Road encourages Western competition. China should not abandon the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you.